Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry if I'm speaking a little quickly. We're just a little behind, obviously. So, real quick, everyone is muted. Please drop questions in the chat and we'll get to as many as possible. Um, Closed captioning is available. Those instructions are in the chat. This program is being recorded. If you would like to refer back to any information presented here tonight, you can head over to our YouTube page at Sno-Isle. That link is also in the chat. Shay has provided us a template to create our own zine later in the program, but also for you to use just whenever for future use. So we'll drop that link in the chat now so you can have access to it, but also just for future reference, we'll drop it in again before we start doing the actual zine making. So the chat is your friend. Make sure you are friends with the chat. And just drop all your questions there, please. So, hello, my name is Jen. Again, thank you for your patience. I'm a library, oh, my name is Jen, she, they. I'm a library associate at Arlington Library, and I'm very excited to introduce our presenter this evening again, but for the first time to you all, Shay Mirk. So Shay is an author, illustrator, contributor, editor, and many other comics, zines, and works of literature aficionado. They have many interesting works. I'll do my little bit again here, such as graphic novel Open Earth, very fun. Nonfiction teen novel about figuring out your body, sexuality, gender, that sort of thing. You do you, good one. And a graphic novel, Guantanamo Voices. This one is featuring personal accounts from prisoners in Guantanamo Bay. Very interesting. That's that one. Those are all available through your Sno-Isle account, as well as their newest release, Making Nonfiction Comics. That is on order. We don't have it quite yet, but it is reservable through your Sno-Isle account. So you can head over there, log in, or call or chat into your library. I also really want to quickly honor Shay. They just wanted a Spark Award for 2025, which recognizes and supports artists. So congratulations, Shay. Yay. And finally, I want to thank everyone for your respect and mindfulness sharing this digital space with each other. So I'll stop talking now and please join me in welcoming Shay.
Thanks, Jen. It's so great. Yeah, I'm Shay. I'm here in Portland. I'm here with my dog Elote, who's sitting over here looking like a bat. There she is, big ears, stern face. So we're going to be hanging out here tonight. And I'm hoping people can introduce themselves in the chat. Just tell us where you are. And because this is hosted by a really great library program, tell us your favorite thing about the library. I have a technical question, which is I'm not sure that the chat's going to everyone. So Jen or Robin, could you change the chat settings so that everyone can see what people are posting potentially? I think it's maybe just going to host some panelists.
It for sure is. You can definitely send things to everyone. Folks, if I do open it up to where everyone can see everyone else's post to the chat, people still have to change it to send to everyone.
Okay, cool.
So right now, I'm seeing everyone is sending to hosts and panelists as well. But I can definitely read stuff out if you'd like. I don't know
It's more
how
like
you want to do
I
it.
want people to be able to see what each other is posting and what they're
To
asking.
enter. Okay, got it, got it. Let me do. I will work on that in
I
the back
just
here.
reset that.
Okay.
I
Oh, good.
just
Thank you,
reset that
Okay,
for
Robin.
cool.
you.
Robin
Yeah.
is
Okay,
saving
so
our
when
lives tonight.
when you share in the chat, set it to send to everyone instead of hosts and panelists if you can. Hopefully that's working.
They should be able to
Yes. Okay,
post
great.
to
Yay.
everyone now.
Cool. Thank you. I like that because I want people to share questions and ideas and opinions and personal perspectives with each other. So tonight's topic is a very brief history of zines. We're going to be talking about zine history, which maybe some of you have a lot of experience with, which is why I want to open it up to sharing. But before we do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. So I'm a comics journalist. I make nonfiction comics, so comics about real life and in a bunch of different formats, in books, like Jen mentioned, online, and as zines. And I've done this professionally for about 10 years, but I've been making comics my whole life. And so I also identify as queer, non-binary, and live here in Portland. You're totally welcome to ask me questions about that. Sometimes there's like teens or young people who come to these programs who are like have some cute questions about what my life is like. So nothing is too personal for me. Feel free to ask whatever you want when we're doing questions. We don't just have to talk about zines. Zines are life. But here's tonight's plan. I'm going to do a brief introduction about who I am. I'm going to show you guys how to fold a mini zine together. Then I'm going to talk about zine history for about 30 minutes. And I'm going to give you guys a prompt to make a zine. But if you don't feel like being creative tonight, if you're like, I'm dead, I don't want to do something creative, you can just hang out and listen or knit or do whatever you want to do. But if you do want to make a zine along with us, I'd love it. I'm going to make one. You'll need a few supplies, and one is a piece of paper of any kind. So I have like copier paper, but you can use what literally I have printer paper, yellow paper, sketchbook paper, whatever, just a piece of paper. Scissors are helpful if you have them, and a pen, pencils, stuff you want to draw with. So if you do feel like being creative and doing the activity along with us, go grab that stuff. We'll need it in about 5 minutes. And if you don't feel like doing that and you just want to hang out and listen, that's great too. I'm so happy that you're here. And I'm stoked for the Sno-Isle Library to host this. Great. And I'm going to be talking about zine history while we're working on the zine. But if you can't multitask that way, like listening and writing, you can just hang out and listen, and then we'll have some time at the end to work on our zines. If it's not already clear, I love questions a lot. But I also like we can just have questions as I go along. So if while I'm talking about something, you have a question, you can drop it in the chat. You can also, if you're a Zoom expert and know how to do this, you can use the raise your hand function, and then I'll see that you want to say something. Or you can wait until the end and say it aloud. We'll have time for questions at the end. But feel free to drop it in the chat as we're going along. I'm pretty good at reading while I'm talking, so I'll see it come in. For example, I just saw that Logan loves that they can print zines at the library. Thanks, Logan. That's great. Glad you have that. Um, Also, other things are welcome too. So we're going to talk about zine history, and maybe you guys, some people here have made zines in the past or grew up collecting zines or traded zines in the 80s or 90s or early 2000s. I'd love to hear that stuff. So if you have any personal life experiences you want to share, that's super welcome. Doesn't have to be in the form of a question. You can just say, I saw a cool zine when I was a teenager. And that's all welcome too. So add anything you want to the conversation in the chat. I'd love to hear it. Great. Okay, first off, if you're sitting here being like, what's a zine? Very basic definition. It comes from the word magazine, and it's a publication that can be really any size or format, but it's really about the spirit of what this publication is. A zine, in my definition, is an independently published multi-page work that's created primarily for passion, not profit. So you can sell zines, like I sell zines, I make a little bit of money at it, but the primary motivation here is passion and that you're part of a community of people who are making and sharing their work. And that it's multi-page, so it's not like just one sheet, not a newsletter, not a poster. I started making zines when I was a teenager. I grew up in a really small town in California that was pretty isolated, and I didn't know anything about zines or zine culture. I just started making and selling them and sharing them with my friends. I just felt compelled to make them. I basically thought that I invented the medium as a teenager and then was shocked to discover other people. This is circa 2004. So here's a historical photo from the archives of me at that time when I started making zines. And this is the kind of stuff that I was drawing back then. So these are some comics I was making. This is from 2005 when I was a teenager. And my neighbors got a Hummer, and I was upset about it for environmental reasons. I was like, these big SUVs are destroying the planet. So I drew a little comic about it and printed it up as a zine and just gave it away at my school. Here's another comic I made at that time. This is when the United States invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, and there was big protests around the country about it. But in my town, there were not big protests because it was a little bit conservative, and also there was just not that many people that would want to go protest. And so this is a little comic about there being like my school, there was like 4 people that were protesting, and I wanted to join them, but I was too shy and didn't want everyone looking at me. So I made this comment to kind of process my feelings around that. And I'm basically doing really similar work to this today, like almost 20 years later, actually 20 years exactly later. I'm making really similar kind of work using comics and zines to process my world and document it and to sort through my feelings and ideas and to figure out what I'm feeling. I started working back in 2017 for the Nib, which is a publication that published political comics and nonfiction comics from artists around the world. I got a lot of experience there making nonfiction comics. And then I put together this book, which Jen mentioned, called Guantanamo Voices, which is a series of 10 different interviews with people who have spent time at Guantanamo Bay in some capacity. So people who are incarcerated there, people who are in the service who worked there, lawyers who represented people who were incarcerated there. And then each of their stories is illustrated by a different artist. So each chapter is a different voice, and it's also a different visual voice. And it's felt really powerful to me to see all these voices in conversation, sort of a chorus telling this history together. Um, and at the same time that I was making these kind of books, I was making a lot of zines. I actually did a project in 2019 where I was making a zine every day for a year. And so I made 365 zines, some of which are seen on the screen here. So they're about all different kinds of topics. Some of them were fun, some of them were silly, some of them were political. But what I would do was just set a timer for an hour each day and then make a zine for an hour. And it was a really important outlet for me to just have a space to like be creative, make something, actually like get something done, and to embrace imperfection because the work I was doing on that book on Guantanamo Voices felt so high stakes. Like this has to be really good. You know, people are honoring me by telling me their stories. This is a really high stakes project that I'm working on. We have to get it exactly right. And that's a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And so to sort of de-stress each day, I'd be like, I'm just going to make something for an hour. It doesn't have to be good. It can be really silly. It can be like a joke, and or it can be really kind of like a political activism. And that is really how I fell in love with making zines all the time. So these days, I use a lot of zines sort of to engage with the world and as an activist. And I mostly put them online and people can download them for free to use for library programs or schools or to make their own zines. So here's an example of 4 zines that I made this year that people can download for free. So one's about my friend getting top surgery. That's like a guide to top surgery that's really sweet and helpful, hopefully. It's a guide to abortion access in Idaho. Around the country. And then this guide to basic digital security, which actually I made for my parents and they have not utilized in any way, but many, many other people have. So that's really helpful. So it's just sort of, you can see it's a wide variety of topics of just stuff that I'm kind of interested in and want to share about and make zines about. I also run a Zine of the Month club, which helps me sort of stay on top of what people are making and to share my own stuff. So every month I send out a zine that I made and a zine that somebody else made to about 250 people in the mail. It's a lot of work. I spend a lot of time putting together mail, which I love. I love sending mail. But basically, it's an excuse to make something every month. So every month I'm like, okay, I have to make a zine to send out. And I need to find a different artist's zine to buy and feature for this. And so I'm constantly trying to find new artists and whose work I can share and feature them in this. And it's just a really nice way to like stay connected to the world of zines. Here's an example of a bunch of zines that I sent out last year. So yeah, I just love being immersed in kind of the world of zine makers and people that are making cool work, finding stuff and sharing it. It's my passion. And aligned with that, I have a zine bike. So if you're in Portland, maybe you'll see me out and about. I go to like parks and events and give out zines for free. And so it's really important to me to not just have zines be online. Like I love the how zines can really cross like the digital and real life divide. So while I like uploading zines and having people download them for free, I also love just going out and giving out the tangible version. It's really nice to have something you can hold in your hand that you can give away or share as a gift. Um, so that feels really special to me. So that's my zine bike. And this is the zine template that you all have access to download if you want to as part of this program. It's hopefully will inspire you to make your own zines. So after this program ends, you have this template. Even if you totally forget everything that I say, you can print this out and make zines with your family, with your friends, or with kids. I really love this activity, so I hope you guys do too. These days, for my actual job, I'm running this publication called Crucial Comics. We publish nonfiction comics, and it's really a community-based publication. So we publish comics from artists all over. Our submissions are always open. And I also published this book just recently, as Jen mentioned. So if you like what we're doing here and you want to know more, there's a lot of resources for you there. You can check out Crucial, you can check out this nonfiction comics book. And I'll just read a few panels here to kind of tell you about why I love comics. This is from the introduction to the book, and it really sets up why I think comics are a powerful medium, and zines are folded into that because they're you can draw a zine. So here I say, comics capture complex emotional realities, unpack confusing data sets, and reach all kinds of readers. I think comics have the unique ability to create empathy. They give you an insight. They give you an intimate peek into someone's life. They feel real and alive. And you can connect those personal stories to larger patterns in society. So that's from the introduction to that book and why I love comics. So all that behind us, let's fold a zine. I'm going to show you how to fold one. And if you are like, I don't want to do this, it's totally okay. Yeah, you can just sort of go get a snack or something for the next like 3 minutes. I'm going to make my screen big so you can see me. So what you need for this, we're going to do a series of folds, kind of like origami, but really simple. So you just need a piece of paper, and I'm going to walk you through how to fold it to make a zine. So go grab your paper, and you'll also need your scissors for this. So got your paper, and you're going to fold it hot dog style. There you go. Looking like a hot dog. Okay. After you do that, you're going to fold it short side to short side. And whenever I'm doing talks about zines, I always teach people how to fold zines because I think the way I learn is by doing. And so as much as you can learn, you can like listen to somebody talk about zine history, it makes such a big difference to actually make one yourself and to give it a shot. I think it's the best way to learn. Okay, so now you've got this short side, short side. You're going to do that same fold one more time, short side to short side. Derp, derp, derp. So just like this. So your piece of paper is this size. You can get really serious about how crisp you make the folds, like that, or you can just kind of go for it. Okay. Hopefully everyone's there. Once you're at this moment, you're going to unfold the whole thing. And then you're going to fold it short side to short side one more time like this. Hamburger style is the other term for this. So you're going to fold it hamburger style. As you can see, each of these little squares is going to become a page. And then there's one side that's open like a mouth and one side that's closed with a seam. What we're going to do is with our scissors, or if you don't have scissors, just rip very carefully from the closed side up to this middle corner. So you're just making one cut right up to that middle corner. And I'll just give everyone a chance to do that because the next part is pretty magical and you don't want to miss it. Okay. So you make that one cut. Also, there's many different ways to do this. If you've learned a different way, feel free to do the different way. There's a bunch of ways to do this. This is just the way that I like. Okay, you made your one cut. You're going to unfold your zine and fold it hot dog style. So you're holding it like this, long ways. And you see if you hold the edges and you push in, it makes a diamond. You're legally obligated to stare through the diamond. But yeah, if you just hold the edges and push in, doop, the center touches. and you can fold it over to be a little booklet. Ta-da! That's magic. So I'll do that last step one more time. So when you cut it like this, right? Then you unfold it, go hot dog style. Grab the edges, push in, stare through. Stare at a dog. Okay. And then the center touches and you fold over and in. Great. Is anyone stuck? Please drop in the chat if you're like, I got lost somewhere. Have your little booklet. So this can be anything. You know, this is a blank template. You could put recipes in here. You could put a political rant in here. You could put song lyrics in here. You could draw a memoir comic in here. It's a blank slate. It's a little booklet. You can do whatever you want with it. Okay. Anybody stuck? Let me know. Okay. Okay, great. I love taking my zines to the library to get photocopied. I love this mini zine format because you can just run it through a copier and suddenly you have 100 copies. It's a great way to make a little publishing empire. Okay, I'm going to get started back on my little presentation. We're going to put something in the zine, and I have a suggestion for what it is. I love this library love in the chat. I would die for the library. Great. Okay, you can make a zine about how much you love the library. Please, please, please do it. Okay. So here's what we're going to do with this zine today. Very important to know that our goals here are just trying something new, expressing yourself, practicing writing and drawing. A lot of people find making art really intimidating and scary. So if I'm like, write or draw in this zine, a lot of people are like, ooh, I would rather just melt into the floor or slip away into the shrubbery, which is a common feeling. So just know that today our goals are to be really low stakes and just to try something new. And our zine prompt that I'm offering today is to think about an item of clothing that has been emotionally significant to you. So that's the prompt that I'm offering in case you can't think of anything to put in your zine, but you're welcome to make a zine about whatever you want today. So what is an item of clothing that has been emotionally significant? Here's some examples. Maybe it's something you were forced to wear to a fancy occasion. Maybe it's something somebody made for you, either a great item or a hideous sweater. Something that's an heirloom that talks about your family, your history. I might write about this scarf. My sister-in-law gave me this blue scarf, and I've worn it. I wear it literally every day in the winter. It's so nice. Could write about something that really makes you feel like your gender or your body. Maybe you had a hoodie you wore every single day in high school. That would be uh, a item of clothing with a strong emotional resonance. So what we're going to do is just for like 3 minutes, we're going to free write a list of ideas that comes to mind when I say emotionally significant clothing. So I have a little notebook. I'm going to write it in. You can also just type it on your phone or even just think about it for the next 3 minutes if you want to. And if you want to make your zine about something else, like how much you love the library, just free write about that instead. But we're going to take about 3 minutes right now just to free write. And let me see. Toop, toop, toop. Ready? I'm setting a timer. Set, go. Okay, that was 3 minutes. So hopefully you have a little list of something that you want to write about. And my invitation is to work on this while I'm talking over the next 30 minutes or so about zine history. But if you are like, I can't do that, I can't listen and draw at the same time, then just hang out and listen, chill out, and we'll have about 20 minutes at the end to work on these zines. We did get a request for me to show how to fold a zine again, so I'm going to do it one more time. So if you got lost, you're probably not the only one. Just follow along again. So I'll just walk us through it one more time, and then I'll get started on zine history. So here's my piece of paper. You're going to fold it hot dog style. And you're going to go short side like this. And you're going to do that same fold again, short side to short side. So it becomes like this. Doop doop doop. Okay. You've got this little booklet. You're going to unfold the whole thing and go hamburger style. So it looks like this. Oh, mine's a little messed up. That's okay. So it's okay if it's a little bit wonky. We're just having a good time here. This is just practice. So you've got this. It's looks like this. You're going to take your scissors, and from the closed side, from the seam, you're going to cut right up just to this corner in the middle, like that. And then this next step is where people get lost. It's the most magical part. So I'll show it one more time. Unfold it, hot dog style. Grab the edges, push in, diamond formation. Just keep pushing in while you hold the edges. Doop. And the center touches, and you can fold it over to be a little booklet. Great. So hopefully everyone got that this time. If not, just draw whatever you want. You don't have to make a mini zine if you're like, this is not for me. Don't worry about it. So I'm going to talk about zine history for the next 30 minutes or so. And then we're going to have some time to make our zines. So feel free to get working on yours while I'm talking, or if you don't want to multitask, just listen. Just listen and vibe. So I'm working on a long zine about the history of zines. And that's where all my research is drawn from for this presentation. I've been working on this zine for about 3 years, and maybe it's a book instead of a zine because I have too much information. My big caveats here with zine history is that the problem with writing about zine history is that there's too many zines. There's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of zines. So I've just selected a few that I think are really interesting that help show the history here and the themes that really stand out to me. But that's just my personal take, and it's very based on my experience being somebody who lives in the United States. And that's why I would love if you have a different perspective, or if you have zines that you're excited about, or zines that you've come into contact with in your life, share it in the chat. I would love to hear about it. It would really help kind of bolster this. So, first of all, what's exciting about zines? Um, I really love this quote from Ramsey Cannon, who founded the publisher AK Press. This is a quote from 1986. And he says that, like, zines are part of a legacy, of a history of publishing. He says there's been a huge history of creation against the grain, radical underground rabble-rousing against dominant politics and culture. Fanzines are in many ways just the latest expression of minority publishing. So, like, as long as people have been printing, people have been like publishing against the grain, as he says here, and zines are part of that history, but not where it starts. I also really love this quote from Stephen Duncombe. It feels really relevant to our current political era. This is from his book called Notes from the Underground, which is all about zines, and I'm sure you can get it at the library. But this is kind of a long quote. I'll just read the first part of it. He says, "The powers that be do not sustain their legitimacy by convincing people that the current system is the answer. That fiction would be too difficult to sustain in the face of so much evidence to the contrary. What they must do, and what they have done very effectively, is convince the mass of people that there is no alternative. zines and underground culture offer up an alternative. So what he's saying here is, zines like are inherently political. They're showing a different way of being, and they're kind of um, part of a counterculture that's challenging dominant narratives and sort of dominant power structures in our society. So before the word zine came around, people were self-publishing and challenging those dominant power structures. As long as people have been able to publish, they've been self-publishing their work that's not been accepted by the mainstream. So the image I have here on the screen um, is an essay by Ida B. Wells, where she was a journalist in the 1800s and investigated lynchings and sort of like white supremacist terrorism around the country and published her reports. It's something that wouldn't have been published in white-owned newspapers. And so, she went and published it on her own and at black-owned publishing houses. Same thing with this research by Magnus Hirschfeld, who was a researcher in Germany who published the first academic study of trans people. And this is something that was put out in a really small number because it wasn't something that was accepted by like the mainstream medical or academic presses. So yeah, zine like the sort of like underground and self-publishing has always been a route for people to document their lives when it hasn't been something that's been supported by newspapers and other media outlets that are owned by those more dominant cultural narratives. This is a really cool literary magazine that was published in Harlem in 1926. It's called Fire, and it's a whole like literary journal from a bunch of Black creators in Harlem at the time. Let's see if I have no, I don't have the table of contents here, but they only put out this one issue, but it brought together a whole bunch of like young Black creative people like publishing their own work, poetry, essays, and fiction. Really cool publication. And around the same time, artists were self-publishing their work. So Dadaist artists put out these absurdist little magazines that were just super surreal. Dadaism is part of the surrealist art, is a sort of anti-capitalist and surrealist art movement. And they published their own publications really in line with that. Here's one from 1925 called Aesthete. That's a very cool cover. And here's sort of the introduction to Aesthete. I just loved seeing what was inside here. I was like, what's the table of contents going on here? And it looks like totally weird stuff. It's super surreal. They're just having a good time. Being like, we want to really, push back against the idea that art has to like have a really specific message and make money. So we're gonna publish all this weird stuff that we want to make. They have this little guarantee at the bottom of the page. It's kind of blurry here, but it says every article contained in this issue of Aesthete 925 is guaranteed to be strictly in bad taste. And I just love that joke resonating like 100 years later. Okay, I'll skip past these. But okay, so here's a question for you guys. Feel free to drop your answer in the chat. I'll give it a second. What decade do you think people started using the word zine? So people were self-publishing for a long time or doing small press publications like I just showed you, but what decade do you think people started using the word zine? Okay, we've got 1960s, 1990s. Oh, and we've got a great question in the chat about can we find these on the Internet Archive? Yes, most of the zines that I featured here are from the Internet Archive, which is archive.org. And if you just go to archive.org and search zine, that's where you'll find a lot of these. Okay, we've got almost every decade, 70s, 80s, 40s, 50s. It's the 1930s. Wow, way long before most people think of zines starting. Um, the science fiction fans started using the word fanzine to describe their work. So imagine if you're a science fiction fan in the 1930s, you're reading books, you want to talk about them with other people. How do you share the work that you're interested in? You can, on a mimeograph machine, make your own little science fiction digest and mail it around to other science fiction fans. Here's some other science fiction fanzines from the 1950s. And I thought this was really cool where they had this tradition of in the back of each issue, all these science fiction fanzines that were popping out, people writing about their favorite stories, doing basically like book reviews, talk and fan fiction. They in the back of these, they would print people's letters that they wrote into the zines, as well as their home addresses, so that you could mail them a zine. Definitely a different era of worrying about security, but people would say, "Hey, I'm into this. Send me your science fiction fanzines. We can swap." So people immediately started swapping through the mail all these science fiction fanzines. So the way to get a zine was often to put your address in there, and you could trade with other people, um, and receive more in the mail. I just love using the postal service that way. Here's another cool fanzine from science fiction fanzine from there. I just love this cover. These were printed on a mimeograph machine. If anyone has used a mimeograph machine, please shout it out in the chat. I'd love to know. These are really from a different era these days. But it was a revolution in publishing where instead of having to use a big, heavy letterpress machine like what Benjamin Franklin was using, suddenly we had these pretty like portable printing machines where you could make hundreds and hundreds of copies relatively quickly. So that's how people were able to make the zines that we just saw. Okay, another question for you guys. There's a classic American superhero who first appeared as a short story in a 1933 science fiction fanzine. Any guesses who? So, what superhero was first featured in a science fiction fanzine? Anybody? Anybody want to guess? Ooh, we've got Aquaman, we've got Superman. We've got a bunch of quotes for Superman. You guys are correct. It's Superman. Yeah, so Superman started out as a story written in a zine. This was these two friends, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who really just looking for a way to make money. They were pretty hard up, and when their work was rejected by other publishers, they started just making their own zine called Science Fiction, The Advance Guard of Future Civilization. And they made 5 issues of it and published this short story, The Reign of Superman. I should say the character drawn here is not Superman, it's like the villain in the story. So he didn't, it's like a villainous face. Here's what their zine looked like. Not a great cover, but that's what it looked like. But it's just two kids basically trying to make an interesting publication with very little money. And as you can see here, the printing quality is not very good because it's on a mimeograph machine, so they're printing off as many copies as possible, using as little ink as possible. So it does get faded, but they could get their work out there. Here's another page from that same issue where Superman story appeared. I just thought this was interesting, where in addition to science fiction fan stories, they put in sort of like random facts, like early Wikipedia, but just sort of like here's some facts we thought were cool. The average person inhales a tablespoon of dirt every day. That's like so nerdy from the 1930s. But as you can see, it's eclectic. They didn't just stick to one topic. They weren't about being like super professional. They were trying to have fun with it. Here's another zine from that era. Um, that was called Voice of Imagination, which they for some reason gave the acronym VOM, which is hard to think of a worse acronym. Be like, I work for VOM. But they employed a lot of really cool artists and writers who could publish in their issues. So I just love this cover here. And just think about this, this coming out in the 40s and early 50s, really as part of a countercultural movement. When we think about the 1950s in America, we often have this pretty like white bread centric, like suburban white picket fence vibe. And in the meantime, there's just people making these like weird goth art that they're publishing and distributing to their friends through the mail. So this is pretty typical of the era where they have a mixture of hand-done drawings and text, and they would lay this out and print it up on the mimeograph machine. I love this like big-eyed purple people eater thing here. So somebody just drew this, they printed it, um, and it was really kind of a space for experimentation and creativity and playfulness. Um, Voice of Imagination itself was kind of like spooky Halloween vibes. They were really into like what we would now call like goth topics, death, like witches, skulls, that kind of thing. Um, there's this fan letter from a fan named Edith Ide in one issue, and she wrote in. So this is like these are what are printed in the back, like I said, where they list their address and say, "Hey, send me your zines." And she wrote in a fan letter saying, that she went to an all women's college and wished that they had been able to offer demonology as a course But then if she were to suggest a thing, the authorities would have me in a straitjacket. Um, and yeah, so cool. Go Edith. So Edith Ide, really cool woman who lived in Los Angeles. This is a photo of her. She was gay, and she actually wound up playing a really important role in zine history. So she grew up reading these science fiction fanzines, got really into them. She sent in a few of her illustrations to be featured in that one I just showed you, Voice of Imagination. And she had a day job working for RKO Records in Los Angeles. And at night, she created and recorded gay parody songs. So this is her uh, as a performer. She performed what she called the gayest songs on wax under the pen name Lisa Ben, which if you scramble those letters around, it's what do you call it? It's the letters from lesbian scrambled around to make Lisa Ben. And that was her pen name, which I think is so funny. So, yeah, so she was like, yeah, she had great style, really great style. She would kill today. And probably did back then too. So during the day, she's working at her really boring office job at the record studio. And she basically used the office's typewriter to create the country's first gay zine. And it looks like this. It looks like a business report because she was writing it at work, like pretending to be working, so it looks like very important report I'm typing up, but actually it's a zine that she called Vice Versa. And she called it Vice Versa because she says in those days our kind of life was considered a vice. Like if maybe you've heard of the Vice Squad. It was the opposite of the lives we were supposed to be living, supposedly, and understood and approved of by society. And vice versa means the opposite. So I thought it was very apropos. So yeah, it looks kind of like a business report. Here's the first page of that issue. So you can see it's like all text. But I really love this line here, where this is like her editorial introducing this first issue. And she says, this is your magazine. Here's your chance to utilize your creative urge by directing it into literary channels. Vice versa is meant to be a medium through which we may express our thoughts, our emotions, our opinions. And I love this, that like really like core to zine history is as soon as somebody starts a publication, they open it up to others and are sharing that space. So she's not just like, I'm writing this, it's all about me. She's like, I'm ready, I'm making this, and I want you to send in your poetry. I want you to send in your editorials. This is meant to be collaborative from the beginning. And that's really like in line with zine culture then and now. So just a quick recap, because I've been talking a lot. I really feel like this beginning of zines really helped set the course for zine culture for the next 100 years. And these zines are collaborative, they're countercultural, they're not about making money, they're about self-expression and sharing ideas and opinions and weirdness. And they're created with whatever people had available, whether it was an office typewriter or a mimeograph machine. And sometimes they had a big influence way beyond what they initially thought they would. So Superman coming from the pages of a zine, for example, or that voice of imagination inspiring somebody else to go off and make their own zine. I feel like when you make something, you put it out in the world, you never know what the impact is going to be. So from then, a bunch of other people made really cool zines throughout this whole time. I just wanted to highlight a couple of them from the 1950s. I love this, the One Archives, um, which is still around today. If you ever go to Los Angeles, the One Archives is there. They're a big queer history archive, and they made this sort of gay magazine throughout the 1950s, and The Ladder, another lesbian magazine, a lot like Vice Versa. Here's some covers of that issue, The Ladder. They're just really cool. And people published this all the way through the 1960s, I think into the early 70s. Really cool, trippy styles here. In the 1960s, we got a lot of music zines. So while at the same time people are writing about their identity and sexuality and oppression, they're also writing a lot about music. So, this zine on the screen here, Crawdaddy, was really kind of like a rival to Rolling Stone at the time. It had about as many readers when they got started. And it was about covering bands and covering music in a way that wasn't being done in sort of mainstream society. This is another really cool one from the era. I just love this cover, Zygote. Really cool. Okay, we're gonna flash forward to 1973. To highlight another zine, 1973, Put Your Mind in the Suburbs. There's a housewife and mother of three named Bev. She and her sister Nancy are both obsessed with a TV show. Any guesses what this TV show is going to be? 1970s, they're obsessed with it. They make a zine about it. It is, let's see what people said. You got it. It's Star Trek. Yep. We got some Star Trek fans in the house. Um, they made this Star Trek really kicked off a revolution in zines. And because so many people loved the show, they were like obsessed with it and immediately wanted to start making their own fan fiction. They wanted to start publishing their own thoughts on the show. They wanted to make their fan art. So people started publishing zines, and it also led to the creation of the first conventions. What today is now these big comics conventions around the country really got started as Star Trek conventions. The idea of that like fans of a bunch of fans would like come together and make their own media, assuming created this whole culture of like exchange at fan conferences. But Bev and Nancy, the suburban housewives who I mentioned, created this zine, Contact, which they ran out of their basement, and it really focused on Spock and Kirk. And it started off just being about their friendship and their characters, but then very quickly became slash fan fiction. So slash meaning like Kirk slash Spock, romantic fan fiction about these two. Not everything in the zines was like romantic. They took submissions from people from all around the country. So some of it was gay fan fiction, a lot of it was like songs, recipes, art. Um, but it's really cool that they included this all together. They didn't censor it. They didn't say, no, 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 we're not going to touch that. They said, yeah, we'll take all of your submissions about Kirk and Spock and put them together in our zine. And look at this cool design. I love their cover design. I don't know how many subscribers there were. I don't know how popular this was, but I think it must have been pretty popular and widespread at the time because there's a lot of them that are archived. I mentioned earlier the Internet Archive. You can find every issue of Contact on the Internet Archive. So if you want to do a deep dive into some Spock and Kirk poems, recipes, fan fiction, it's all there on the Internet Archive. They're all scanned in. Here's an example of some pages from the zine, which is somebody writing, like Bev and Nancy writing sort of an imagined story about Kirk and Spock, and then some great fan art. Here's some more cool fan art. The text, if you can't read it on the bottom of this drawing of Spock, says, I did not wish to leave the Enterprise, and you, the height of romance. They also made a Christmas issue, which I love. They're like, we need a Christmas issue. So if you want to read this and many other Star Trek fanzines, they're extremely well documented and they're at the Internet Archive. It's a great rabbit hole to fall into. Oh, I already talked about this one. Okay, so while all that was happening, people are also publishing lots of really cool political left-wing stuff. So people are writing about Star Trek, people are writing about music, and people are writing about their big political ideas and everything that's going on in the country right at the same time. The world of zines like goes hand in hand with the world of alternative publishing. So there was at this time a lot of like independent newspapers that people were publishing around the country, often rooted around a specific identity. So this is a copy of Woman Speak. This is New Women's Times. At this time, there was a proliferation of like feminist newspapers and as well as like newspapers covering like social issues and specific local issues. This is a really cool newspaper from Berkeley. So it's not like zines were just happening at it's not like the only thing that was happening. People were doing all sorts of alternative publishing at this time, some in the form of newspapers, some in the form of zines to get their voice out there because people had so much to say. I really like this quote from the writer Sarah Schulman, who kind of documents the scene in 1970 when she was working as a reporter in New York. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but she was working for like 5 different newspapers. One was the feminist newspaper, the Gay Community News, a Marxist newspaper, and another gay male newspaper. So, in New York, there was like a proliferation of all of these small publications focused on identity. Really cool time. At the same time, one of the biggest things that happens in those scenes at this moment is the explosion of punk. And so, punk music, as soon as people started playing punk shows, people started making zines about those punk shows. And it very much went hand in hand because there wasn't a mainstream music press that was covering punk. It was very much underground. So, if you wanted to know about punk, if you wanted to hear about punk, you would make a zine about it. So people would go to shows and they would write zines of reviews of bands, of upcoming shows, very much like zines while they were listening to music and making music. This is just a photo of a bunch of um, uh, from England at the time. And from England, the proliferation of both punk music and punk zines spread around the world. Um, so wherever punk went, zines went too. These are in what became an aesthetic that is now called cruddy. So, sort of intentionally anti-design. So, at this time, people are rebelling against the idea of like perfectionism, against having to be professional, against like, having to look a certain way and act a certain way. So they're like, we're gonna embrace imperfection and just throw stuff down on the page. It's gonna look like what's gonna look like. And this became its own aesthetic, which is what we call cruddy. So this is a great example of a cruddy zine that became a really famous sort of like poster or inspiration in the world of DIY. This is a page from a punk zine. It says, "This is a chord, this is another, this is a third. Now form a band." And that kind of like just get out there and do it. You don't have to be perfect. Just learn three chords and you can make a band is very much at the heart of both the music and the zine making. Um, we moved from people making zines on mimeograph machines to the proliferation of copy shops and photocopiers. This I have this as like an obsolete technology alert because Kinko's doesn't exist anymore. But when I was growing up, photocopy zines to hand, people would go and photocopy flyers for shows. And it's like kind of hard to wrap my mind around like, okay, like 20 years earlier, there wasn't copy shops everywhere. You couldn't access um, like photocopies unless you worked for a school or some kind of big institution maybe that had a photocopier. But once there was copy shops everywhere, anyone could just get out and start making their zines really cheaply. Um, there's so many zines blowing up at this time that somebody actually starts up a magazine to cover all the zines. They try to review every zine that's published, and it's called Fact Sheet 5. And so this becomes like the sort of the warehouse of zines around the country. Instead of publishing your home address in your zine and saying, "Hey, send me your zines," you could get a review in Fact Sheet 5, and everyone would know about it. And it's looks like here's another copy of Fact Sheet 5. If anyone ever picked up a copy of Fact Sheet 5, I'd love to know it. It was like a dense publication. Here's a page from it. And see, it's just like review after review, hundreds of zines in every issue. So it's a little hard to imagine, like at this time, if you didn't live through it, just like zines are everywhere. Everyone's making a zine. And they're about a whole bunch of different topics. And this place, that's a Lotte chiming in. We're in the mall. Hang on one second. Boop. Okay, I have a few other cool zines to show you. Um, I really love, in response to the punk movement, there's zines that are critiquing the punk movement. Yeah. And so I think that's a really important part of zine culture is that like as soon as there's something happening, there's people responding to it. This is a zine called the JDs that was really trying to put more of a queer voice into punk. It's published by a bunch of artists based out of Toronto. And here's a really great quote from Bruce LaBruce about writing these zines. Um, he says, and Bruce LaBruce is still around today. He's still writing about this stuff. It's great. He says the original punk movement, like the early gay movement, was all about embracing all sorts of nonconformist behavior. By the mid-'80s, the advent of the hardcore mosh pit, a new era of machismo and heterosexual rigidity was ushered in. And so he started up zines, trying to focus more on like queercore, queer sounds, and providing a counterculture space even within what was supposed to be a counterculture space at this time. Here's some other rad covers of homocore. I feel like these look so great. I would love to see these today still. really bold design. I love that somebody wrote on the top of this. I got this from the Internet Archive as well. These are all at archive.org. So people scanned in their originals, and this one at the top on the right-hand side here, it says, no, you cannot have this copy, which obviously was at like a record store, maybe like a hair salon or something, and people kept wanting it. Here's another really cool zine from that early 90s era by the artist Vaginal Davis, um, including zines. So people were kind of mixing, matching different mediums. Here's a little insight on that. Same zine. Cool. Yeah, so I think it's just important to say like zines are not in isolation. They're part of other media. They're part of the world. It's not just about what's on the page. It's like they're part of movements. And Riot Grrrl is a great example of that. I feel like if people have heard about one zine movement, it's usually Riot Grrrl, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, where a lot of these started in Olympia and Seattle. And this was again in response to the punk movement. People, a lot of women bands and making their own bands, and along with that, also making their own zines. There's a really cool article about this, and there's a book about it called the Riot Grrrl Collection too, which is where these images come from. If you're interested, you can always look that up and learn more. Here's a page from this zine. As you can see, it's like kind of hard to read. It's definitely in that cruddy style. It's not kind of like thrown together, and it's not about making it looking professional. Not about looking professional. It's about like looking imperfect and looking different and looking kind of rebellious. Doop. And here's a great zine from the band Bikini Kill, Pacific Northwest Classic. They actually only published 2 zines, which they would distribute at their shows and people could take home and photocopy. But then people would take those home and mail them all around and share them all around. So those just 2 zines had like a huge impact and organizing power because they were read by thousands of people. Even though they only published 2 of them, like they really got out there and got widely shared. It's a really cool idea of like you can take this object once it's tangible, you don't know where it's going to go or what impact it's going to have. And here's another zine mentioned in the article from a few years later called Slant, that's really criticizing like the whiteness of both Riot Grrrl and punk and really having a focus on like racial justice, facial critique of this. It's by Mimi Tina Nguyen, who's also still around today, still making zines. And another zine by Mimi Tina Nguyen, Race Riot 2, great, cool zine. You should totally look up if you're interested. Like, yeah, countercultures, just people critiquing, sharing, building, adapting, adding on to these movements. It's all about like responding to what people are making and turning it into your own thing. Oh, have those. Okay, I think this is maybe the last thing I'm going to show you, which is Outpunk, another really just cool zine from this era. And have being all about like queerness in punk music. He ran a record label, so publishing zines and music at the same time. And I just love like this list here on the left-hand side is like a bunch of punk bands with queer members in them. And just being like, here's every punk band that has queer members. It's cool. They just here's of Team Dresch, which played a lot of shows around Olympia. I thought maybe some people here would be familiar with Team Dresch. Cool to see these from the time. Okay, and that brings us all the way up to 2001 when the Portland Zine Symposium started, which is now the longest running zine festival continuously running in the country. It's been going since 2001. And so just as kind of that era of Riot Grrrl and queercore was ending, the Portland Zine Symposium began. And I just think that's really significant because I make a lot of zines and one question people always ask is like, are people still making zines? Are zines dead? Isn't this from the 90s? Isn't this over? And you really just see that like, no, it's constantly evolving. As soon as some people are getting burned out on it or stop making their own things, new people pop up and start making new stuff. So like in 2001, when the Zine Symposium was founded, that's when I started taking MySpace selfies and making my own zines. That's when I came along. And so I didn't know that the era of zines was supposedly over by this point. I just started making my own stuff and sharing it as people have for the last 100 years or so. And I'll end this talk so we can make our own zines with these thoughts from a new zine collective that started up. It's called Zines for Queers. They posted these slides Um, and I just want to read them aloud because I think it's a nice spot to end on. So zines are freedom, print your thoughts, share them offline, build a world beyond the Instagram feed. Here's why you need zines right now: to fight back against the algorithm, to enjoy sending and receiving mail, to practice creating just for the joy of it, to reconnect to physical media, to find your people, and to fight fascism. They said it really well. Okay, so we're going to make a zine. We're going to take the rest of the time that we have, which is about 20 minutes, to work on the zine prompt or the zine that you guys have maybe been working on this whole time. And I am here to answer questions or keep talking. So you guys keep making. Your zine can be a mix of writing and drawing. And I'll just hang out and work on a zine if nobody has any questions, or I'll take questions and answer them as we're going along. Great. That's the end.
Thanks, Shay. Very good. Thank you so much. That was really good. That was so cool. I learned so much. And there was so much more in there than I could have imagined. So thank you. That was awesome. I think we only got one question I saw that didn't get nabbed by you. Good job keeping an eye on that on the chat. It was way early on, and it was, are all of your zines this small size or are some
Mm.
larger?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, this format that I showed you guys how to fold today is called a mini-zine. So it's this small one-page format. Not all of mine are that size, but most of them are. I love making this. I love this format just because it feels really doable. And I feel like when I go bigger, I like suddenly it like spirals out of control and it's like 50 pages long. So
Turns into a
um,
book.
it turns into a book. Yeah. So to keep myself constrained, I often make mini zines, but I do make larger zines. I have to stop sharing for a second in order to go show one. So hang on, I'll stop sharing.
Sounds okay.
Work on your zine.
I'll
But I'll
try
show you guys
and
an example of one that I made that's larger. I like doing you can I mean you make really sort of creative, beautiful um zines of that are like sewn on the edge or made out of fabric or something really cool. But I usually keep it pretty simple because I like ones that are cheap to make and cheap to sell. So I'll show you guys this one that I made. That's a half letter size zine. I made this one called Get Ready. That's a guide to emergency preparedness and building a go bag. Uh, See, it's a half letter zine, which means just a piece. I don't know if you're gonna load. You might never be able to see it. Oh, there we go. So it was cool. I collaged this cover out of paper. So yeah, the cover is collaged, and then I could just photocopy it. And then the individual pages are all like drawn kind of a guide for thinking about disaster preparedness from a communal mindset. So less less like build a bunker and more like get to know your neighbors. And this just felt like a good format for that. And I had more information than I could fit into a mini zine, so I made it this size. And I had a really fun time collaging this cover. That's an example of one.
I'm so glad whoever asked that because that was really fun to
Yeah,
look
thank
at.
you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or just like comments, reflections, things anyone wants to share?
Thoughts, ruminations. Everyone's being really engaged in the chat, which I really appreciate. I'm glad that you recommended we open that up because it's more fun when people interact.
Yeah. I like the comments in the chat about that you need to cultivate a Sno-Isle zine community.
Looking at this. I got a little distracted when you were like, okay, we're done. And I was just sitting here like, hmm, hmm. Where's that
Yeah,
emoji?
does the library have a zine collection?
You
What's the
know,
story there?
that's a great question. We do have a very small zine collection as well as a few resources like sort of guide how-to kind of stuff. That link that I've dropped a bunch of times to our website that says what is a zine That's where all of
Mm.
our resources are compiled. I'm definitely keeping track of all of the things that you have mentioned here tonight, and I'm going to update everybody, whatever email you registered with. I'm going to send all of the cool stuff that we went over that isn't included in that blog post. But yeah, we don't have like a big zine library, so it could be an interesting thing. Well,
Yeah.
it's
Anywhere
going. I'm
local for
clocking
like
it.
zine community?
I
Is
personally,
there
I
anywhere local for
don't.
like zine community?
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't know any. I'm sure that there are, but I'm not familiar. If anybody around, if anybody in the chat, if you guys know anywhere, or I guess the call is for us to do it. We're going to become the zine community.
Yeah. Great.
That's
Great.
funny. I'm clocking it. I'm clocking it, guys. And yeah. Yeah. Oh, Seattle Public Library. That makes sense. Yeah, Robin. Robin is saying that Seattle Public Library has a zine collection, which that sounds about right. That checks out. Yeah, that's a really good question about our own zine community. I'll see what I can find out for you all. Oh, big zine display in Vancouver, BC library. That's cool to know. Thanks, Ruth Ann. And Timberland Library has a zine collection too. Oh, cool. And they have a swap box. That's awesome. Okay, that's great. Yeah, thanks everybody. Can you about this,
And
Jen? Go
somebody
ahead, Shay.
somebody asked if my public transit, I have a zine called Transit Characters as Transit Systems as Fictional Characters, um, that I made during my Year of Zines thing. It's not like available to read anywhere. I just made it that one time and haven't remade it or sold it anywhere. So it's just it was just something I made for fun. But I'll see if I can show you guys the files from it. Yeah, I have the files here because I just found them. So I'll just put them up on the screen and show you guys. So you guys can be the only people that see the zine. Because sometimes I make
Cool.
zines to sell, sometimes I just make them for fun. So yeah,
Haha.
here's what I
Secret
did with
inside
that zine.
look.
And yeah, and this is from, I love to take public transit everywhere in the country. So let's see. DC Metro is Frank Underwood. He'll get you there for a price. He'll
Yeah.
definitely screw you over if he feels like it. And it's hard to read
Hard
his
to read.
moves. The LA Metro is Suzanne Warren from Orange is the New Black. She says, I'm not crazy, I'm unique. Everyone thinks she's insane, but she's not. She's just as deserving of love as anyone else, and exceeds all expectations despite her flaws. Said San Francisco's Bart is Pete Campbell. He caters to the 9 to 5 crowd. He looks slick, but is often actually useless. He somehow perseveres despite being smarmy, has a retro color scheme. You guys can see my feelings here about um, different transit systems. Boston's T is Jerry from Parks and Rec. He's discombobulated. He's the butt of the joke. He hasn't updated his look since 1975, and he still tries. And he's hard, and you're rooting for him. But it's hard. Um, I said, hang on, let me rotate this. Chicago CTA is Sam Sylvia from the TV show Glow. I don't know if you guys have seen that show, but he's seen some shit. He's an unfortunate history of racism. He's a real unreliable asshole, and somehow he'll always pull through for you in the end. Begrudgingly, you will get there. Let me see. I think I do one more. I did Marta from Atlanta. It's big, bright, exuberant, excels at the art of doing nothing, and is weirdly unlike any other creature and is very unreliable. So that's my like very niche nerdy roast of different public transit systems. Oh, yes, to that question, Mark Maron did play this character. Uh, the character's name is Sam Sylvia, played by Mark Maron. Yeah, if you haven't seen the show Glow, it's a really fun show. It's about women's wrestling,
I
and
was
it's
just
just
about
funny.
to say that. If you don't know Glow, you should check it out.
Yeah.
This is just a
So
recommendations
this
hour
is
now.
a very nerdy niche zine about different public transit systems. Maybe I should reprint this. I never know what people are gonna like or what's not. I often just make stuff where I'm like, this is my weird little nerdy niche thing, and then people love it. And then sometimes I make a weird nerdy niche thing and nobody cares. They're like, why did you make that? So yeah,
Same.
my most recent zine is about potatoes and how much I love potatoes. and it's kind of just drawings of potatoes from around the world. And people love it. People keep buying it, so that's exciting. Um, I will say I'll drop a link if you want to join the Zine of the Month Club. I send out zines every month, so no pressure. But if you are like, I want snail mail zines, you can join the Zine of the Month Club. I put the link in there.
Good way to
But you
discover
can also,
fun new zines too.
yeah, you can always just get zines from the library.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's get that going.
I would
Yay,
say,
cool.
yeah.
No,
Um,
go ahead.
just wondering if there's any other questions or ideas or reflections from anyone. These are great.
Did anyone actually work on their zine? I'm just curious. I got one page done and
Oh,
I
let's
did
see what's your
nothing.
one page.
Oh, I don't know if it'll let me show it. Ah, it's so
If
hard.
you, I think if you back up, it says clothes with sentimental value. What's it going to be about?
Oh, great question. So this is my giant comfy sweater that my cats love. So it's just like
Ooh.
half cat hair because they lay on it all the time. And when I'm wearing it, I become the blanket. Um, Comfy work shirt. It's my most comfy work shirt. And then my big stompy combat boots.
That's great. Great outfit. Yeah, is there a way for people to
Altogether,
share
it would
their
be an
view?
interesting look for sure.
Yeah. Can people share their screens or can people like share, or is the Zoom not set up that way, or can they share them somewhere else?
That's a great question. You know, I don't think we do have the capability to I'm sure that we do, but I'm not familiar with it. What if you guys, you know what? I'm gonna submit here. If you guys want to submit any kind of questions or follow up or anything, let me copy this right here. Do 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 do. Um, or submit your photos here. That's a good way for us to track these sorts of things. And yeah, it would be cool if one or more of you wanted to submit a sort of like ticket to us. It's a good way for me to keep track of all of them. Yeah, so yeah, asking about sharing. Please do. Yeah, if you can snap a photo or upload an image, please do submit them and I can compile them and get them distributed to everybody. That would be very cool. I'm already planning on sending everybody a follow-up email. With all these extra links and things. So yeah, if you want to submit a picture, please do. Please, if anybody also still has oh yes, an email or social media, Shay, too, if you guys see this in here.
Cool.
Let me, if you guys, oh sorry, Shay, go ahead.
Oh, I just said people are saying really nice things about how they want to make scenes with their family. So thanks for sharing.
Everybody's so cool in the chat. Yeah. Everybody, if you keep on, please do keep talking. Yeah, Robin is exactly where my mind is at. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I will look
Tomorrow's
at that.
theme is butter tarts. How to make butter
Oh yeah,
tarts.
so okay. People please keep interacting and asking questions in the chat. I'm gonna just go through my quick little end spiel here and then we can keep chatting here. So thanks again everyone for joining in this evening. This program has been recorded. If you would like to refer back to any information presented tonight, head over to our YouTube page at Sno-Isle, drop in that link in the chat. Some upcoming online programs you might be interested in include How to Make Butter Tarts, which is tomorrow at 6 p.m. So if you want to learn what a butter tart is, please do tune in. It's going to be really good. They seem very interesting and tasty. On Tuesday the 16th at 4 p.m., we have art cards and gift wrap, which I think is a fun sort of DIY crafty thing that is related to folks who might be interested in zines. You're just going to learn tips and tricks in salvage paper crafting and DIY for the holidays. Registration is required for both of those, so those links are in the chat, or just head over to our website. You can browse the events. And thanks again to Shay for sharing their expertise on zines. If you would like to follow up with Shay, please visit their website. You can reach out to them. All the contact info is there. Or for more info, you can check out that blog post on Sno-Isle. Or, like I said, I'm going to do a follow up because there were so many good resources shared today. So please don't hesitate to reach out for assistance or wait for that follow up from me. And yeah, does anyone have other
So.
questions?
Your enthusiasm has been infectious. Thanks for being here and thanks for sharing. Yay.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Shay. It's been
Everyone,
so much fun. Yes, and thanks so much, Robin. Robin really came in clutch and saved the day. All right.
enjoy making butter tarts tomorrow.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you,
Bye.
Shay. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Have a great night. Thanks so much.